Hi guys, and welcome back. We're moving on with more examples of integration by substitution. So in this example we have the integral of x times the square root of x plus 2 dx. And of course when we have a square root we want to try to rewrite it if we can. So I'm going to rewrite this as x, there we go, x plus 2 to the 1/2 power dx. Alright, so now it's time to try out our substitution rules. So if we choose the first term here, our derivative will be 1, okay? So I don't see a 1 anywhere in here, so maybe that's not the best choice. The next part that we have is to choose this part. Now if I choose this part as well, the derivative of x plus 2 is also 1. So what if neither part is helpful? Then you have a couple choices. Okay, now the first thing that you can do, and this would be incredibly difficult, but you could, let's say if this was not a 1/2 here, you could factor out that term and remultiply everything, or you can still do substitution. There's just an extra step in it, and I'll show you how that works. So let's have the more complex part here be our u. Okay, because chances are if I cover up everything inside that parentheses, at least that's taken care of, right? And all we have to deal with is a single x. So that's going to be way easier to deal with than everything that's in this parentheses. So let's start this process. So let's do u equals, and we're going to do x plus 2, okay? And then we're going to do everything else just like we've been doing. The derivative is just 1 times dx, so just dx. So we don't actually have to solve anything there, right? Now, the next thing that you have to do, okay, because there's nothing that I can replace this x with, nothing. What you can do is from here, you can solve that equation, u equals x plus 2 for x. And that's the only way that we're going to be able to get this x right here in terms of u. So let's do that. So I'm going to start that list down here, okay, so that everything's in order. That's just how I am. So if I were to solve for this x, I'm going to subtract both sides by 2. So u minus 2 is equal to x. So now I have something that I can directly substitute this x with. All right, let's go ahead and see what this process looks like. So we're going to do integral. Now, keep in mind, I'm going to replace this x with u minus 2. So I'm going to put that in parentheses. So u minus 2. This next part is the u to the 1/2 power. And now dx is just du. Now, you may be wondering, well, where in the world can we go from here? Because this looks like a substitution problem all over again. Well, the good news is we can actually distribute these terms. Okay? We are going to do the u to this u to the 1/2 and then the -2 as well. So let's work carefully. Lots of room for error in this problem, so you want to make sure that you're really well organized and that you follow really clear steps. Now, this u to the first power, u to the first times u to the 1/2, you add the exponents together. 1 and 1/2 is 3/2. So u to the 3/2. And now -2 times u to the 1/2 is just -2 u to the 1/2. So now that we have these really nice just power rules, we can go ahead and integrate each of them individually. So process remains the same when integrating. We add 1. 3/2 plus 1 is 5/2, so we're going to divide by 5/2 here. Over here we add 1. 1/2 plus 1 is 3/2. We're going to divide by that here. So let's be really careful with this. Again, when you divide by a fraction, you multiply by its reciprocal. So instead of dividing the first term by 5/2, I'm going to multiply it by 2/5. So 2/5. And then u, 3/2 and 1 is 5/2, like so. I'm going to bring the -2 over, okay, and I'm going to multiply that by the reciprocal of the 3/2 that we're dividing by, which is 2/3. You can actually rearrange these if you choose to. So if you'd rather do the 2/3 first, You are absolutely welcome to do that. That's not going to change any single part of your answer. And then u half plus 1 is 3 halves plus c. So now what we're going to do is we're going to substitute and simplify. First term, 2/5, nothing to simplify there. And we're going to substitute u with x plus 2, that's what it was originally, to the 5 halves power, minus, now 2 times 2/3 is going to be 4/3. Our u, once again, is x plus 2 to the 3 halves power, and then plus c. That one was a pretty tricky one, but we made it to the end. All right, let's take a look at another one of these guys. So we have the square, or I'm sorry, not square root. We have the integral of x squared times the square root of 1 minus x dx. And again, I'm going to rewrite this so that there's no square roots. So x squared times 1 minus x to the 1/2 power. So let's go ahead and check which term to use. The derivative of x squared is 2x. Okay, now that might be really helpful here, except we're missing the 1 with it as well. If we were to resubstitute this parentheses, we want all of it to be substituted. So that would work if this was just an x. That's not going to be helpful. Now the inside part, the derivative of 1 minus x would just be -1. That's also not going to be helpful. So again, if you're in this situation, you choose the more complicated part. It's usually the part that's with an exponent. Okay, so that's going to be our u, which means that we're going to have to solve for x when we do this process over here. So let's start by doing u equals 1 minus x, okay, which means du is going to be -1 dx. So we need to solve that one for x, which just means that the negative will travel to the other side of the equation. And now we need to solve the first equation for x. Okay, so to solve this, I'm going to add x to both sides. That's u plus x equals 1. And then I'm going to subtract a u. So x equals 1 minus u. Looks like they just switched places. So I've got 3 key pieces of information that I'm going to need. The first piece, my dx piece, and my x piece. So let's go ahead and see if we can do this. So since my dx and my u did not cover this first term, that's why we did this part right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to replace x with 1 minus u. We're going to keep that squared, and now that's being multiplied by u to the 1/2 power dx. Or sorry, not dx. We are negative du. Okay, now just to make sure that you are not going to subtract a du here, you can write a multiplication sign there or something. So just so that you know that you're not going to actually subtract a du. All right, so how do we go ahead and distribute this when this term here is to the 2nd power? Well, this is where the pain of this comes in. You're going to have to FOIL this out. You're going to have to square that binomial and then distribute that with the u to the 1/2. So without further ado, let's get that process started. So the first part, and by the way, before we go any further, I'm going to put this negative on the outside of the integral. So negative integral. So 1 minus u squared. Let's see, that's going to be 1 minus 2, oops, come on pen, 2u plus u squared. Now, if I went too fast for you there, go ahead and FOIL it out yourselves and check your answer out with mine. Now, that's all going to be kept in parentheses, and then we have that being multiplied by u to the 1/2 du. All right, now it is time to distribute. So all together, we've got negative integral. So I'm going to do the 1 first. 1 times u to the 1/2 is just u to the 1/2 power. Okay, next term, negative 2u times this. Well, this u here is to the 1st power, so we add the exponents. That will give us 3 halves. So minus 2u to the 3/2 power, and then last but not least, u squared times e to the 1/2. 2 plus a half is going to be 5/2. Yeah, 5/2. Sorry about that. Plus u to the 5/2 du. And now it's time to integrate. So again, we add 1 to all of these and divide by their sums. That's 3/2. That's going to be 5/2. And that's going to be 7/2. All right. So I'm going to bring down the negative. And dividing by 3/2 is multiplying by 2/3. And by the way, you're going to want to keep all this in parentheses because that negative also is going to have to be distributed. Oh joy, I know. So the 2/3 and then u to the 3/2. The next part, I'm going to do the minus 2 first, and then multiply by the reciprocal of 5/2, which is 2/5. And then u to the 5/2. And the next term plus reciprocal of 7/2 is 2/7. And then u to the 7/2. All that plus c. So we're going to clean this up and then we'll be done. So all of these terms are going to get a little negative sign distributed, just to keep that in mind. All right, so the first term, negative 2/3, that's not going to change. But I am going to resubstitute u, which is 1 minus x, and that's to the 3/2 power. Negative 2 times 2/5 is going to be negative 4/5, and then we distribute the negative to that. That's actually going to turn into a plus. So 4/5. And our u is 1 minus x to the 5/2. And then our negative gets distributed again, and that's going to be 2/7 times 1 minus x to the 7/2. And last but not least, plus c. That's going to complete this video. Thanks for watching.